Okay, so we're on. We're on to the Japan panel. Nice to see you again, Marc and Hideki. Ohayou gozaimasu. Good
ございま
afternoon to you
す。
guys. And we are on. You guys were here last time. Appreciate that with your presentation. And one of the things that we had discussed earlier was to move the discussion forward after a really good presentation and conversation back in June on the Japan panel. I think it was very well received. Marc, I don't know. Do you have a presentation today? I
I
can't.
do, yes.
Great. So why don't you guys both, maybe Hideki go first and introduce yourself again for those who don't know you. And Marc, you guys are both in Tokyo. Then Marc, introduce yourself, and we'll go straight into your presentation. And I'm going to be moderating this panel. I'll be mostly quiet and just move the discussions along. So Hideki.
All right. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Hideki Ninomiya. I'm CEO of Orient. My business is basically do DX consulting for like Japanese companies and also cybersec technology import to Japanese market. And trying to help like Japanese company that needs to globalize and also like a global business engagement and tech discovery, MVP, and service development support also. And I'm especially finding a fine emerging tech and resources from all over the world and trying to import to like Japanese customers who actually need help. And focusing on like improvement of the UX and the system quality and the scalability, and also like a cost reduction or the efficiency approach is essential for those customers. So I'm trying to bring a better approach, learning from worldwide. And I think like CE region have a better approach and a better new way. So I think it's great to engage with you guys to learn more and bring a Japanese customer for better business approach. And we also do like a tech bridge engagement and the training and trying to Japanese customer enable to self engage with like C region companies. So that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you.
Okay. Marc, let's go into your introduction of who you are a little bit.
Sure.
Those who don't know you and a bit of your presentation. Then I'll certainly have some questions from my perspective.
Sure. So, thanks, Tom. My name is Marc Einstein, and I'm the chief analyst of ITR Corporation, which is a Japanese IT research and consulting firm. So, I am based in Tokyo. I've been in Japan for about 10 years now. And basically, in a nutshell, what my company does is we work with large Japanese corporations and help them with their IT problems. And so this really spans the whole gamut from security, data center, cloud, software, IoT, 5G. And we work with the big banks in Japan, airlines, automotive companies, manufacturers, etc.
Okay, great. And you're going to give us a little bit of a screen share, I suppose,
I
and a
am.
presentation overview of the market there in Japan.
Yes. So, is everything coming across clearly?
Great, great.
Okay, great. So, again, I think good morning for most of you. Basically, Hideki and I are going to have this panel together, but what we thought would be good to start off with is just a few slides of content to kind of set the stage for our discussion. Tom told me that about 30% of you were maybe with us in June, and maybe 70% of you are new. So I have updated some of this information a little bit for those of you who may have seen it. So please just bear with me. But basically what I want to do here is just show you some of the research that my company does on Japan's IT market, particularly as how it could be relevant to you guys, the maybe solutions suppliers in the CEE region. So basically what I'm going to do is, this is just a little bit about my company, ITR, but I've already pretty much explained who we are and what we do. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But what I do want to talk about, if you were with us last time in June, I think we were, really starting to think about what the impact of coronavirus would be on Japan. Clearly now that we're in September, we can, see a little bit more clearly what the effects have been. And I think this is a very important point. So I showed this slide last time. So one of the core things that my company does is we every year measure what the spending is in the IT market. And I think I said 3 months ago, we really weren't sure what was going to happen. You can see we've been tracking this since 2001. In 2009, the market really contracted. That was the Lehman shock year. And I believe I said last time that we still thought that the market would grow. And we're actually officially releasing these numbers next month. But I can tell you that despite the massive recession that Japan has, which is largely but not entirely due to coronavirus, the IT market in Japan will grow by about 2% this year. And that's very interesting because I think what we're definitely seeing here, not for every company, but for many companies, is that coronavirus is really accelerating digital transformation. This is a really exciting development. IT spending, like I said, is going up. So this is really great news for our industry. We have so much bad news every day, but there is a little bit of good news. And so again, the key takeaway here is that we do expect growth in Japan's IT market this year. Now, this is another new slide that I didn't have last time. So another thing that my company did is my company's been doing a lot of interviews with IT departments to find out, what's going on with coronavirus and how is this going to change Japan. And I think I would start off by saying, I think some of you in the audience should be familiar with Japan to some extent. And if you are, you probably know that in Japan, work from home was a big no-no. I mean, that was considered not a good practice, and very, very few companies did it. And basically overnight, almost the whole country started doing it, at least in the IT sector. And so we've seen a massive shift in work culture and work style. I believe that now that everything is being done online, this will facilitate outsourcing to places like CEE. I was talking to Hideki the other day, and I was saying, if we had done this last year, I would have said the chance of anyone in the audience getting a CEO from a Japanese company on a Zoom meeting would have been somewhere near zero. And I think today it's pretty close to 100% in terms of would they be willing to do that. And so that's great. We can't travel yet, but if you're in Poland or Bulgaria or Romania or whatever, I think it's going to be much easier to do business with Japan. We still have a language barrier, of course, but I think it would be much easier to get a translator on a Zoom call for not so much money. So I do think that as we think about post-corona IT, there are some things that are going to facilitate business, cross-border business with Japan. So that's a good thing. Just looking at some of the things that are changing, because of Corona, you can see some of the more popular things. Basically reviewing the entire IT governance, especially concerning security. Security has become more important because more and more things are coming online. We have had quite a few projects delayed, as a lot of companies try to figure out what the overall top line and bottom line impact of COVID is going to be. Getting special budgets because of Corona. Like I said, we're seeing IT budgets increase overall in Japan. Now, the next one is the key one for this audience, strengthening external organizations such as outsourcing systems. So basically, we have about a third of large Japanese companies are now more open to outsourcing because of Corona. And I think this is a key point that was not something we knew 3 months ago. Internal organizations and even increasing IT staff because more things are going to go online, more e-commerce, all this kind of stuff. So I think, again, the overall takeaway here is that, budgets are increasing. And I think attitudes are shifting, which are more conducive to doing business with organizations such as yourself. And so this one is just another new one, and I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but
Hey Mark, can I
yeah,
interrupt you a second?
sure.
After this day, can we get a copy of that presentation?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So we'll figure out a way to get that to our guests that request it. So anyone who asks for that presentation will somehow connect them to you or somehow distribute it to those guys.
Yes, everyone can absolutely have a copy.
Super.
So basically, again, I'm not going to go through all these things. My company, like I said, we, surveying IT departments is kind of our core competency. So we do a lot of surveys every year. But again, this is just trying to show some of the specific technologies that have changed because of coronavirus. And so again, what you can see is that from the medium blue to the light green, all that growth is because of COVID-19. So on the extreme ends of each of these chart are we already did it or we're not going to do it. So everything in the middle has changed because of COVID-19. And so what you can see, for example, if you look at the very bottom, introduction of telework has had the biggest change, which is obvious. But also, new communications tools, remote access, BYOD for the first time, satellite offices, online sales channels, moving away from physical retail into online retail, cloud services, paperless services, and RPA are huge topics here. You might know that fax machines are still used in Japan. Physical seals, which are known as hankos, which are required to certify documents, are still heavily used, but this is all going digital at a much faster rate. And this is very good for IT outsourcing. This is very good for software development. So, like I said, despite the fact that there's been lots of horrible news regarding coronavirus, I do think we're seeing some pretty big changes, which to me are very exciting. And again, so I did talk about these topics last time. I do want Hideki to be able to share his really interesting insights with you as well. So just very quickly, there are socioeconomic factors besides coronavirus that are driving the IT market in Japan. Labor shortage is the big one. You probably know that Japan's population is shrinking and also getting much older. And therefore outsourcing in general is, a big topic. But, we have a lot of natural disasters in Japan, movement to clean energy, and also, relying less on imported food are also national priorities where there are also opportunities in the IT market. This next slide is just talking about the labor crisis in Japan. And again, these slides will be shared with you. So if you'd like to read in more detail, you're very welcome to do so. But IT, security, software development, it's very hard to find good people in Japan. IT development and English teaching are basically the two things you can do in Japan without speaking Japanese. AI, this is again just getting into a little bit of the nitty gritty about the AI. Again, it's about reducing labor, improving manufacturing, automotive, self-driving cars. So AI is a big focus. If you happen to be a company that's developing something for machine learning, RPA, or AI. And again, I think I'm getting towards the end. I think that, and I think we're going to talk about this more with Hideki, but there is increasing interest in working with CEE countries, especially now that many of the countries are part of the EU. I would say that Japanese knowledge and understanding, particularly what the strengths and weaknesses of different countries within your region might be, is still something that needs improvement. But we are seeing deals being done in the Ukraine and Slovakia. Transcosmos has gone into Romania and Poland, for example. So we are starting to see things move slowly. But I do think this will pick up in the coming years. And so, this is just kind of a summary that I kind of just mentioned, that I do see great potential. Japan is still Japan and is still very much a challenge in many ways. But that was basically a quick run through of what the situation is in Japan's IT market. But like I said, I do also very much want to bring Hideki into the conversation because he also has a lot of great insight and things to say. So thank you.
Hideki, you want to go first? I've got a couple of questions, but maybe you want to start.
You can give us the questions first anyway, though.
Yeah, so Marc, a little bit on the gaming side. I was speaking to the Warsaw Stock Exchange guys a few days ago, and they said that after Tokyo, in the world, the largest listed gaming companies are in Poland. So on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. So Tokyo, then Poland. I mean, the gaming sector is just, of course, globally has boomed, but the CE-based gaming studios are really tremendous number of them in Serbia and Ukraine and Romania and Poland. Do you see any potential for cooperation there on the development side? And if so, any examples or ideas for the audience?
I do. So I actually used to work in the gaming industry in Japan, and when I was there, we tried to outsource a lot of our graphic design and other things to Vietnam. It was cheaper, but the quality was not there. And so I think that especially in terms of graphics and animation, there is huge need for that because of the labor shortage. And I would also say this is actually something Hideki told me is that Netflix and Hulu recently have exploded in Japan, and so animation overall, which would be gaming and also TV content, is massive now. So to answer your question, Tom, I absolutely see that as a wonderful area of potential that I think most Japanese people, even in the gaming industry, don't know that places like Poland are so strong.
To the same, you kind of alluded to my next question, which is if you're in Japan, you're looking at naturally Southeast Asia, Philippines, maybe Vietnam, somewhere else. Is there a perception or opinion in Japan of Central Europeans being somehow better, different than a cheaper outsourcing or cheaper partner in Philippines or um, somewhere else in Southeast Asia?
I don't know, Hideki, do you want to take a shot at that one?
Yes. Okay. So from my point of view, basically like South Asians outsourcing is originally Japanese company aiming to reduce the operation and the development cost. So they try to move some function of the development to that kind of area. But the reality is, there's a language issue, of course. So they need to send some people over to such area, and they actually, spend 5 years, 10 years, and they develop the, offshore center. But the problem is now, it's not cheap anymore, and because cost, the quality control actually impacting the cost, and because CE region has more technical skills, and I think highly educated from like a math or like a psychology and all the academic background, so they make decent like products with the AI or IoT. So Japanese company are now figuring out where is the best area to collaborate as the next stage, and they are now aiming to CE region actually. So that's the differentiation.
Yeah, and I would
from the cost perspective. Go ahead.
I would also add on top of that is that outsourcing to China and South Korea are increasingly no longer options for political reasons. So that's also causing some companies to rethink everything.
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree with that.
And Hideki, also tell us, you touched on AI, et cetera, other things. if I'm looking at Central European digital service providers here, I mean, what can they do better to present themselves in Japan? What are some of the cultural differences that aren't connecting in terms of forgetting the language for the moment? I mean, the actual language, but in terms of the presentations, in terms of the access, in terms of the how Central European companies might approach the Japanese market, are there some funny mistakes they're making that you see as consistent mistakes, or things that they can do differently that might apply to many of them? Give us a couple of stories and ideas and suggestions.
Okay, so first of all, you have to be patient because they're really slow on like a decision making because they need to gain all the approval from everyone to actually get involved with the project, which is necessary for like a Japanese culture, processes. So that's number one. So if you do push too much, what's going to happen is like they will escape.
Back. Yeah.
So that's you need to aware of it. And then the other two thing is important, like a payment and the legal perspective. So because of the Japanese company, I mean like from a political reason, we Japan is really close to the U.S. side, and it's really difficult for us to pay make a payment to third party of the company sometime. I mean, let's say for US, it's easy to pay a bill or or conclude the agreement. It's not going to be a problem. But for like a Ukraine, some companies feel okay, that's too much. Do you have like US bank account or UK bank account? How about Singapore? That's going to happen. So for CE region, they need to prepare for such situation, like setting up the bank account in UK or US and somewhere around major countries.
Okay. Marc?
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that. So my clients ask me questions like, what is the cost per hour for software development in India versus China versus Thailand versus Vietnam? No one has ever asked me about Bulgaria or Lithuania or Romania or even Poland. So, and the chance they're gonna look for that themselves is maybe zero, and the chance they're gonna find that on the internet as Japanese is maybe close to zero. So I think there's more that needs to be done in terms of promotion, because I think a lot of my clients, Americans are infamous for being bad at geography, but Japanese can be too. And so there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of promoting the fact that some of these places might be actually excellent IT outsourcing destinations.
Mm.
Okay. And do you think that is something that the governments in Central Europe should be doing, or the cities themselves, or the
So some of the embassies here in Japan are trying to be fair. I have been to some events, but I think there needs to be much more of a presence, and I think that industry associations, of course, play a big role. I think forums such as what you're putting together, Tom, also play a role. But I also think that some of the end companies themselves are going to have to push it themselves to clients just to get the ball rolling.
Okay.
Right.
Good. Okay. And there is an annual big IT fair. I think it's a Reed show in April. A big IT event expo, I suppose, in Tokyo in April. Is that one of the things that people go to? That's, for example, that sensible.
I think with Corona, we are not sure what
True.
is going to happen. Yeah, so that's a big TBD for now.
All right.
Mm.
But the biggest one in Japan is actually CTEC, which is in October. So some of the people in the audience might be able to attend that online.
Okay. Okay. And Hideki, in terms of well, you guys were on this panel in June, and you're helping sort of what we say grease the wheels and with Japan and Central Europe, we say slang American. But in terms of are there any particular deals that are close to getting done between some of this audience and back in June? Because you mentioned to me offline that there's potentially that coming up pretty soon. Of course, I don't want names, but I'm curious about the type of structure or the type of services that might be in the scope of some cooperation.
Okay, I can answer that. Actually, for initiative, your 4 initiative is running, you know.
Four.
And
Okay.
two is about closing. We are actually negotiating between supplier, which is the company, and also like end user, Japanese company.
Okay.
And then one is making a booking system,
Booking.
virtual meeting space booking system. Yeah. And the other one is, to automate transcription system for all the video or commercial, because they want to use the system to learn all the, like information, spread it out on YouTube, or, there's many, knowledge out there. So they want to try to use it because, they want to overcome somehow the language barrier, but they don't know how to. So.
Okay. Marc, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm not directly involved in any deals to the extent that Hideki is. So that would be more his area.
Okay.
And the other good area is, I'm trying to sell automation process. I mean, the middleware product to like a Japanese market. I mean, one Japanese supplier is really interested in getting I would say like an import product as a solution to sell Japanese market, because many Japanese supplier does not have decent products available. So they are always seeking for another good product from all over the world. So I'm finding one, and I'm connected to the Japanese supplier, and we are trying to make a deal now. So that's the third one.
Okay.
So we product perspective, I think that's way easy to reach into the Japanese market, more than like a software development, I would say.
Okay. Specific product.
Okay.
Okay. Let me two questions, slightly different. In terms of this day is not about investment from Japanese companies into tech companies here, but I'm going to ask the question. I mean, do you see any scope for Japanese tech companies, other companies that might actually be buying a Central European based tech company or investing in that? That's not the scope of today's conversation, but I'm curious about that.
If there's no language barrier, I think that could be happen. But for those who actually do like all the procurement deal, I'm not 100% sure they are comfortable with dealing with the overseas companies. I mean, like vendors. As far as I meet such people, they are more focusing on like Japanese startups or venture companies.
Yes.
That's the reality.
Right. And second question, slightly different. Outsourcing in the BPO. You mentioned Transcosmos, who has actually in Poznan recently and set up in Cluj in Romania. I understand that they are mostly servicing Japanese corporates who want to outsource into in this case, Central Europe. Do you see more of that happening? And part of what I'm asking about is I can see some of the Japanese corporates who have very large operations in Western Europe, Paris, UK, Holland, Germany, for example. And some of those guys are looking to outsource some of their language issues, F&A issues, contact centers away from Western Europe into Central East Europe. Do you see that as something, as a potential opportunity for Central European BPO companies, ITO companies? So the real question is how much more outsourcing of Japanese companies is to come in the F&A, HR, ITO, etc.
Mm,
Do you follow my question?
okay. So from my understanding, HR is really different. So it's really hard to get into the market. That's my honest, opinion. But I found the interesting situation, during this the COVID situation, is like risk of the location. Like China, Vietnam, India is, for us, it's really familiar with offshoring area. But in this, Corona situation, there was lots of lockdown, and the operation was stopped, and the development was stopped, and that was a huge impact. We had opportunity to review like a such situation, and then we figured out like a CE region has less, number of the people infected, with the virus in it. So this might become an opportunity to review the BCP area or operational redundancy point of view, I think. So for like, let's say, security is a big issue, and there's, we have a shortage of, highly skilled engineers. If CE region have a SOC, SOC team available for 24/7, then we might be able to think, asking the, do we have opportunity to, deal with? So we have a couple actually area that we can think of based on the corona's, impact.
All right, Marc, any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised, frankly, if Transcosmos has any customers in CE that are not Japanese. I mean, I would actually imagine it's 100%, and I would imagine that Transcosmos went to the region because they were asked by their end customers. And I think what is going to determine how much more this grows is where the manufacturers go. So if the automotive guys, if the Toshibas and the Hitachis and the Daikins, if they are investing more and opening more factories and customer service centers, then absolutely they're going to have the IT companies will follow their customers. So and I think with Japan's free trade agreement with the EU and things like that, I would imagine that we would see more in the future.
And other types of niches that you can think of. Let's talk a bit more about the gaming for a minute and the graphic design and such. Again, a little bit of niches, but how let's say relevant might be gaming providers, gaming developers in Central Europe? Can they do work for Japan, do you think, or is it so different like work? Because gaming in Japan is pretty different than the rest of the world.
Yeah, so that's a good point, because it is true that one of the issues that we had in Vietnam is that the animation style, the kind of cutesy look and all that was not what they could particularly imitate to the extent that local companies can. And even in countries like China or Korea, where it was fairly close, but it wasn't quite what they wanted. So I do think it depends on the game, and it does depend on the company. So somebody like, I used to work for Gree, which produced a lot of anime-related games. It's harder. But for someone like a Konami, who makes more, I would say, Western style games as well, I think that there's absolutely no issue with collaboration.
Hideki, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I have the same idea of what just Marc mentioned, and if I can add some idea, because for the design perspective, for like online game, they make like armors, swords, and stuff, right? But the like I would say, like a 70% of prototype goes to like a garbage or like a disposal. Unfortunately, that's the reality. So now, like gaming companies starting figuring out how much designers and the cost is used for such disposal area, which is waste, and they want to have better quality and make like a Kaizen process to not to spend so much resources into waste stuff. So it's kind of difficult for just a designer. But the if gaming programming like online, I think there might be lots of demand, because we have a shortage of the developers, coders especially in the gaming area.
Okay. And I am aware of several Polish companies or Central European, Slovakian companies, etc., who have done pretty well in Japan. And one of those is Asset, which is the security guys out of Slovakia. Apparently, they're doing $50 to $70 million out of Japan.
Yes,
successful, maybe the most successful CE-based or CE origin company. There's also Comarch, which is trying to fight into the Japanese market. I understand. RTB House was last time in June on our panel here. Any other examples you've seen? I don't know, Ukrainian or we haven't talked about the Baltics at all. Estonia has a pretty close relationship with Japan. They're quite good on different things. But anything from the Baltics or Romania or Ukraine, Bulgaria that you've seen companies that have popped up and done something well, and what might they have done so well to have built out a niche like assets or Comark or RTB? What is sort of the trick to entering the market and doing it well? And the same question related, of course, is have you seen anyone that's come in and failed miserably? You don't have to name any names, but that has not done it right. I'm also curious to hear some lessons learned on both sides, what works and what hasn't worked, with some specific examples, if you have any.
So one is, I have lots of connection in Ukraine basically, and then one Japanese, company is of course located in the Kiev, and he actually, I can name the name, but he's running an AI company and really doing well because he could bridge between Ukrainian people and the Japanese people. So if you can find the right person who can actually do engagement or bridging, that will really help. And if you get the external translator, that might be a little difficult. And I'm figured out that for translator, like half day, like 500 US dollar to like 800 US dollar usually costs, and like a POC usually take like at least 2 weeks. So it's a lot of the cost. And then if the translator is not capable enough to take English or Japanese translation, that's gonna be the problematic. So you got to find a guy who actually do like a bridge engineering, and that's one of the successful key factor, I believe. Yes.
Okay. Marc, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was in Prague right before COVID really got bad, and I met with Avast Security, and they do B2C security, and they kind of went through their whole journey in Japan. Apparently, they did quite well with a direct to consumer offering. Estonia is, like you said, it's quite famous in Japan for kind of smart society, and Japan is really pushing this concept, something we call here Society 5.0. And so Estonia is definitely seen as an innovator. And I know several Japanese executives who've gone there on fact-finding missions, but I don't know any companies from Estonia that have necessarily landed here and done well yet.
Okay. I know that there was Latitude 59 in Tallinn, Estonia, I think at the end of August. They apparently had a good bit of Japanese companies that come in. It's typically more the startup focus, but nevertheless, there seems to be some sort of connection. I'm not sure why that's the case. Maybe it's because of the Helsinki Finnair flights, makes it easy. Could be as simple as that.
I mean, I think it's because they have 99% of their government services online, and I know that Japan is very interested to digitize and all. I mean, that's why the people that I know have gone to Estonia specifically, and the startup team.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So we've got just about 4 minutes left. Maybe some final closing comments from Hideki and Marc, and as let's say pearls of wisdom for the audience and looking at the Japanese market. And let me just be selfish and direct with you guys. I mean, how can you, if someone's listening here, how would you help someone? I mean, how can you help someone? If someone's in the audience listening said, oh, great, I'd love to access the Japanese market. Where do you guys come in? What do you do for them? A little chance for advertisement for yourself.
Okay. I can actually, help both like Japanese and CE companies to engage, one to the other. So that's actually I do, and I also support, bridging the engagement. But I'd like to comment, one last thing is that in general, Japanese company have a long process of making decisions. Usually take like 6 months to 1 year. So if you would like to join in a Japanese market, you have to be really patient. And you need to aware of how long it's going to be take to get the approval internally, and then you get the business. So that's it. I mean, that's the most concerning usually my C company's partner have. So I think that's good to know.
Okay. Mark, any
Yeah,
thoughts?
and I would just say that my business model, even though Hideki and I are colleagues and friends, my business model is a little bit different. In that I basically work for and am compensated by the end user companies, and so I get 20 to 30 emails every day from big Japanese companies about their IT problems, but I don't know what they are going to be. And so if there's anyone out there that thinks they have a solution that might be interesting, they're very welcome to send me an email and send me a pitch deck, and I will add it to the pile. And there is a chance, but no guarantee, that tomorrow I could get something that could be very interesting to them. So that's how they could engage with me specifically.
Okay, cool.
Right.
All right, guys. Thank you very, very much. How's the weather in Tokyo? And by the way, what's the Olympics? What's going to happen next year?
No clue, unfortunately.
Yeah, 60 billion has already been spent. So
Yeah. Oh no, that's a headache.
I think that it's going to be Abe's legacy, who has just stepped down, and also Governor Koike's legacy. And I think they're going to fight tooth and nail to have something, even if it's very, very scaled down with no spectators. They're going to try their best to have it, but. And I also have tickets, so I kind of hope it happens. But.
Okay. Marc, Hideki, thank you guys very much again for being on this panel. We're going to cut off now. Stay on time. Hope you'll stick around in the day. I know that some people have specifically requested meetings with you guys.
Sure.
So we'll clustered that time in together. So we're off. Thank you very much. On to the next panel. Thank you very much.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.